Council will come to order. All rise, salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, republic, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for our veterans, servicemen and women, and for those who've given the ultimate sacrifice. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Colin Hayes. Councilor Condon.
Here.
Councilor Crowe. Here. Councilor Linehan.
She's here.
Councilor McDonald.
Here.
Councilor Murphy. Here. Councilor O'Malley. Here. Councilor Sika. Here. Councilor Simonelli. Here. Councilor Winslow. Council President Sparafor.
Council Sparafor here. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes. Minutes of the meeting of March 8th. Oh, I'm sorry.
What?
Public comment first.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. You were stepping out of minutes. I was reading.
Yep. Okay, there will be Michelle Long, 11 Daniel Street, regarding the child marriage resolution.
Thank you. Ms. Long, please come to the podium. Let me turn your mic on 1 second. Hold on a sec. Why is this not? Does anybody know why that's locked up? Can you press the button? My computer's locked up. You have the floor. Just state your name and address for the record, please. I don't know. Does anybody know what the password is for this? No. Nope. Michelle, just give us 1 second till we get so so the residents can hear you.
Council.
Thank you. Sorry about that technical difficulty. Oh, why isn't the software up? Oh, is that it? 1 second, Michelle. Okay, there we go.
Hello? Ah, there we go. Awesome. You're welcome. Hi, my name's Michelle Luong, 111 Daniel Street in Malden. I am president of the Zonta Club of Malden as well as a community activist. And one of the things Zonta globally has been fighting for is the ending of child marriage across the globe. So it completely horrifies us as a Malden club to realize in the state of Massachusetts, underage marriage for children is actually legal with parental consent. So yes, during the COVID in 2020, we had a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old married to older men with parental consent. We have had over 1,200 cases of children married under the age of 18 over the past 10 years. We have tried this is our third legislative session, we have tried to get this passed. It is co-signed by our own contingency here in Malden, so all of our representatives are behind us on this bill. And I'm imploring you as our city councilors, each of you have promised our city to protect children, and I'm asking you now to get behind the bill that Councilor Linehan, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Winslow, and Councilor Colin Hayes have gotten behind, ending child marriage in the state of Massachusetts. It's making it a human rights crime, and we're asking for you to support Bill S 937 in the Senate and H 1709 in the House of Representatives. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sure.
Yeah. Am I on? Am I on? Can you hear me? Okay. It sounds quiet in here for some reason. First of all, Michelle, I want to thank you for coming before us, and I want to thank you for all the hard work that Zonta has done over the years. I know I went to a meeting not too long ago, and this was one of the topics that was brought up. So Thank you for your dedication to this and for all of Zonta International for looking at this. And I would like to be added as a sponsor to this bill also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Murphy's added. Anybody else want to be added? Council Cronin, I think, I don't want to go on a limb, but I would assume every council would be against child marriage. Seeing no objection, you can add everybody to that bill. Thank you. I don't see any-
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Michelle.
We absolutely appreciate it, and I ask that you call your councilors, call your senators, and ask them to sign on to the bill if they haven't already. Thank you.
Okay, no other lights, right? Okay, next order of business.
I have one other email public comment.
Yep.
From Ari Taylor, 57 Mount Vernon Street. Dear councilors, I would like to first thank Councilor Linehan for submitting this resolve, and to Councilors O'Malley, Winslow, and Colin Hayes for signing on as sponsors. This issue has been very important to me for the past 4 years when I learned that child marriage was legally occurring in Massachusetts. As a mother of 3 young women and a human, the idea that girls as young as 12 have been signed into marriage with older men by their parents and a judge horrifies me. These young girls cannot legally ask for a divorce, nor can they enter a domestic violence shelter or seek help from really anyone. By the time they are old enough to apply for divorce, they are undereducated, without support, generally will have several children, no income, and no skills. We have an opportunity to let these young women and others know that they have rights and deserve better. It is my hope this resolution will pass unanimously and the city of Malden will take a stand against child marriage. Thank you, Ari Taylor.
Thank you. No other lights. Next order of business.
Approval of the minutes, March 8th, and approval of the minutes from March 1st.
On Counselor Seeker's motion to approve the minutes of March 1st and March 8th, 2022, seconded by Counselor Simonelli. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Minutes are approved. Next order of business.
Appointments, mayoral reappointment, Diana Chung, 12 West Street, Malden, Mass., to the Cannabis Licensing Enforcement Commission, said term to expire March 15th, 2025. Sponsor Chris Simonelli. Mayor reappointment, Catherine Peckham Bilgen, 63 Upham Street, Malden, Mass., as the builder architect member of the Zoning Board of Appeal. Said term to commence upon confirmation by the council and to expire March 1st, 2025. Chris Simonelli. Mayoral reappointment, William Coleman, 53 Kimball Street, Malden, Mass., as a member of the Department of Public Works Commission. Said term to expire March 1st, 2025. Chris Simonelli. Mayoral reappointment, Andrew Zemagny, 16 Cross Street, Malden, Mass., as a member of the Registrar of Voters Board. Said term to expire March 31st, 2025. Chris Simonelli. Mayoral reappointment, Amanda Bells, 4 Stone Lane, Apartment 5235, Malden, Mass., to the Disability Commission. Said term to commence upon confirmation by the council and to expire March 15th, 2025. Chris Simonelli. Mayoral reappointment, Eric Henry, 75 Wiley Street, Malden, Mass., to the Planning Board. Said term to commence upon confirmation by the council and to expire March 1st, 2027. Chris Simonelli.
On Counselor Simonelli's motion to refer appointments of personnel, personnel appointments? Yes, I was looking at you. So Counselor Simonelli, 1 second. You have the floor, Counselor Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that in the past of this committee, I know that, particularly I know some of the new counselors that wanted to, when these get referred to, when they're reappointments, and it goes to our personnel committee, and they want to sit on it. But, once again, I mean, if there's no objections, unless there's a problem with any of these reappointments, or you want to get to know some of these people and talk to them, that's fine. But having as many committees as we have and being really inundated with referrals and reappointments and new appointments, I would recommend that, unless anyone's got a problem with it, I would recommend that we vote these reappointments out this evening, Mr. President, so we don't have to bog down the committee any more than it's bogged down. Again, I open it to my colleagues if they feel as though that they need to have any questions and want to find out about the backgrounds of the reappointments, then, I'll step aside. But if we don't have that issue, I mean, I think it would be a good practice to reappoint them. Unless there's any problems with it, then refer it. But I mean, it's just, you know, every week, we get a lot of referrals in the appointments committee, so, you know.
Counselor, I see Counselor Winslow went first, and then Counselor Kahn.
I guess I'm hearing a different tune sung here, because I know we had people from the Affordable Housing Trust, and when we came out of COVID, I think there was basically a decision that we should be sending people to personnel, and I guess I would like to actually at least participate in the discussion of one of these folks, so, that's kind of my point of view, thank you, and I think maybe, yeah, that.
Counselor McDonald, you all set, Counselor Winslow? Yeah, I'm set. Okay, Counselor.
Counselor Simon, you know, I take the point. There's a lot of appointments that come, and I'm feeling caught between the reality that I have no information about many of these people based on just the name and address in the agenda. However, I'm not sure that it needs to be the practice for every single appointee that they have to actually come and appear in person. And so, you know, while I would like to, I'd be happy to find the right way to be in conversation about, is there another thing we could do? Could we just get some background information on folks? Could we ask folks to just submit a statement about why they want to be reappointed? Maybe they can join by Zoom. I mean, we don't have a policy, but it's less onerous for them. So, I mean, I'm open to other solutions. I just feel like I need more information than the name on the page.
Okay. So it seems like we get a consensus. So, on Council Simonelli's motion to refer to the Appointments and Personnel Committee, all in favor? All opposed? Items are referred to Personnel and Appointments. Next order of business.
Petitions, paper 9922, petition extended hours, Supreme Food Mart, 1018 Eastern Ave, Malden, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day renewal. Petition taxi cab licenses, Malden Transportation, 292 Eastern Ave, Malden, 9 taxi cab license renewals. Petition lodging house license, BREC LHP LLC, 155 Clifton Street, Malden, Mass., 17 rooms renewal. Petition Class 2 Regano's Towing, 1152 Eastern Ave, Malden, new.
Okay, Councilor Seeker's motion to refer to license. All in favor? All opposed? Items are referred. Next order of business.
Next order of business, paper 10222, regarding paper 6022 order. In compliance with the February 7th, 22 court order by Justice Camille Saraf, further discussion and votes may be taken in regard to expeditious handling of the necessary requirements of the court's order for review and hearing of the Verizon application for 5G antenna on utility pole 2452, adjacent to 3739 Willard Street, Malden, Mass., associated with paper 58121.
Okay, as the sponsor of this paper, I put this paper on with the anticipation from legal counsel that if we want to discuss the previous meeting that we just had with public properties, that we could discuss it in good order without suspending docket rules. The hope, I think, is to set a time frame to have that public hearing, which I believe I'll let Council Winslow read the report from the committee if you want. All right, we'll get that. Yeah, we're going to read into the record. We're going to read into the recommendation, and then we'll agree on a time frame that's reasonable to comply both with, I think, the committee's wishes and certainly the court's wishes. Let me turn your mic on, Council Winslow. Council Winslow for the paper. For the
Okay,
committee.
so this is the committee's recommendation. The council as a whole hold a public meeting for the following purpose: to receive and discuss an opinion from the city solicitor's office setting forth whether Verizon's application for a small cell tower on the pole located at 37 to 39 Willard Street substantially meets the technical requirements of the city's small cell ordinance. To receive public comment on whether the application substantially meets the technical requirements of the city's small cell ordinance or otherwise was not issued lawfully. 3, to receive and discuss information by an independent peer reviewer with expertise in preparing radiation reports to the FCC standards. 4, for the city council to review the opinion and public comment and make one of the following determinations. that the application did not substantially meet the technical requirements of the city's small cell ordinance and therefore was issued in error, and therefore the city council revokes the permit issued on the date, that the application that the application substantially meets the technical requirements of the city's small cell ordinance, and therefore the city council affirms the permit issued on that date, revokes it revokes its December 21st, 2021 order to Verizon to remove the antenna and directs the Inspectional Services Department to process the permit application. So that was the recommendation that was voted on from the Public Properties Committee. And just for information, I think most of you were there, but just for information, it's important for everybody to know that in reviewing, one of the questions that came up on December 21st was the homeowner at Willard 37 to 39 notified appropriately? And one of the things we found out from the assessor and clerk's office is that for all our small cell antenna notices, there was a flaw in how we did that. Typically, you know, when we have a zoning board of appeal thing happen, the zoning board of appeals uses an address and sends a butter notices to everybody around that address. And that was the method we used. What that meant, because 37 to 39 Willard was used, they actually did not get notice even though they were the nearest to the pole. So there was a mistake. That's the city's fault. The nearest abutter did not get that. That was something that, as far as we know, is probably systematic to all our small antenna things. So it's very legitimate that we have and give the homeowner an opportunity to raise any particular issues about that license that they could have if they had been appropriately notified. So that's the recommendation. But we as a council did issue that. So that's, I will otherwise be quiet. I just want to explain that for people who weren't at the hearing. But we found, you know, a systematic mistake. And we made a mistake. And so I did apologize to the homeowner, but we should remedy that by having the appropriate hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Winslow. Discussion on the motion before us. So I think the work of the council, I think everybody's been very clear, that's been caught up in the legal briefing, that we have to have a fair and equitable or efficient time frame to have a public hearing. It'll be before this committee. What would be fair and what would be an efficient and speediest process, you think, for a public hearing? The clerk, not the acting clerk, but the clerk who's on vacation right now, usually requests 2 weeks, which I'm fine with. Oh, Council Winters his hands up. But I would just say, with one of the peer reviews in there, I don't think we could honestly get a peer review in 2 weeks. I would like to, but let's just discuss that. Council Winslow for the.
So my recommendation, I mean, considering this is the city council meeting, if we do it 2 weeks, it would be on a council night. The committee's recommendation was to do it on the council of the whole, so maybe 3 weeks would be the appropriate time to have the hearing. So that would be, you know, I think consistent with the recommendation, so that we not taking out of a normal council business meeting to hear this. So that would be, you know, so that we didn't give a specific date, but that would be consistent with the recommendations. Thank you. So, but it's up to the council. That's just pointing.
Councilor Seeker.
Thank you, Council President. Don't we usually hold these public hearings on regular full council meetings, not on committee of the whole? Are we expecting it to be a longer meeting than we normally would? Really?
Well, they usually are held.
They usually held on tonight, when we're on TV.
Hold on. Councilor Winslow, and then I'll go to Councilor O'Malley.
No, for the public property committee, normally we would be meeting on a committee night, so.
This isn't considered a public property meeting, though. It's gonna.
Yeah.
It's
So
a
it's
public
up to you.
hearing
I
during.
point that out. I don't have any, you know, I just point that out, but.
Okay, thank you, Council. Councilor O'Malley for the paper.
I would prefer 2 weeks during the full council meeting, just for transparency's sake.
Agreed. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to answer JD, and I think, or Councilor Sika, sorry. We have not always had them on council nights, but we've always had them in this chamber so that they could be broadcast and on Zoom. And I'm not saying we have to do Zoom, but that had been the practice, just to make sure that the most residents who needed to could participate. So I think we should hold to that practice regardless of what week we do it. I think it's best to do it in here and somewhere that we can stream it. or that UMA's going to record it.
Okay, so before us, we have 2 weeks. Fair enough? Two weeks? Okay, let me just set the date here. Let me get the calendar. So that would be the 29th of March. Okay, on Counselor Winslow's motion for the 29th, is that fair? You gonna second it? Okay. No, Counsel O'Malley's gonna second it. So on I think it's gonna be a joint meeting, right? Technically, it came out of the paper? Is that what you said though in the paper? Was it a joint, or did you say the council whole? Okay, I just didn't know what the paper said. All right, so we're gonna hold a public hearing for the committee of the whole on March 29th, 7 o'clock. I don't know if we have to give a time, but 7 o'clock?
That's a council meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna do a committee of the whole. Oh, we can't do it at 7 o'clock, that's right. Full council, let's do it on the 29th, 2 weeks. During the meeting. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Everybody else, okay, on the 29th, full council, have a public hearing on 3739, the 5G antenna in front of 3739. We'll make sure the clerk, just we publicly say this, make sure that all the abutters are properly notified, including the house in front of the address of 3739 Willard Street, seconded by Counsel O'Malley. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next order of business.
Paper 10322, resolve that we, the Malden City Council, strongly condemn the abusive practice of child marriage in Massachusetts. Further, that we indicate our support for state-level legislation currently under consideration to ban legal marriage in Massachusetts for the protection of human rights, dignity, and opportunity for all young people, especially young women who are disproportionately impacted by child marriage laws. Whereas forced child marriage constitute a violation of a minor's rights and dignity, and whereas the United States Department of State recognizes marriage under 18 to be a human rights abuse, and whereas current Massachusetts law includes a loophole allowing marriage under age 18 with no minimum age, resulting in more than 1,200 children as young as 13 married in the Commonwealth between 2000 and 2018, 83% of them to adult men. And whereas child marriage increases the risk of domestic violence and poverty and undermines a child's access to health care, education, and opportunity, and whereas minors who are married cannot obtain abuse prevention orders, seek help from DCF or domestic violence shelters, enter into a legal contract or retain an attorney, or even file for their own divorce or annulment. And whereas child marriage petitions have continued throughout the pandemic, and Massachusetts has no residency requirement for out-of-state petitioners, resulting in our state as a destination for those seeking child marriages. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Malden City Council, 1, condemns the abusive practice of child marriage in Massachusetts, 2, stands with women's rights organizations, including Zonta International, and elected leaders across the country, including our own local legislation delegation, who are working to end the harmful and archaic practice of child marriage. 3, support statewide legislation that would ban child marriage and affirm a legal marriage age of 18 with no loopholes.
Counselor, I know everybody joined it, but we do have Counselor Linehan, Counselor Winslow, Counselor Colin Hayes, and Ryan O'Malley. So Counselor Amanda Linehan, you're the first, I think the lead sponsor, so you have the floor if you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to belabor this. I think we heard from a few members of the public as well as members of Zonta. I want to thank all my colleagues for joining as co-sponsors. You know, when the members of Zonta first brought this to me, I was frankly horrified and shocked. I couldn't believe that this was on the books in Massachusetts. You know, you think of our state as being a leader in terms of child welfare and protections and human rights for women, but unfortunately we are a bit of an outlier here. A lot of the states around us are moving right now to ban child marriage, and I think it's important that we be in line with that, and that as a city, because we do have a local organization who's really leading on this and really leading the charge in terms of the statewide advocacy, I think for me, that's one reason why it feels like a good move for our council to get behind that, which I thank you all for doing, and I just wanted to kind of quickly recap it and thank everyone for their support. I'm glad that we can take this step.
Thank you, Councilor Linehan. Anybody else for the paper? Councilor Winslow.
No, I know this has been a very important issue for our local zonchins and zonchins in general. It is kind of amazing in this day and age that this would be happening, and I know, as it's been called to my attention, it's amazing that this hadn't happened 100 years ago, let alone now. I know personally, sometimes I think you shouldn't even get married before age 25, so to think a 12 or 13-year-old has enough capacity is horrible enough, and I don't mean to, this is an important thing, and that, to recognize that a 12 or 13-year-old cannot make such an important decision affecting their whole life. It's just simply abuse, and to allow that to happen is something we need to stand up as a society. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Anybody else? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on Councilor Linehan, seconded by Councilor Winslow, to approve the resolve. All in favor? Sorry. All opposed? Item carries. Next order of business.
Paper 11322, resolved that the Malden's pension fund will end new investments in any Russian companies and review ways of diverting from entities linked to the country if applicable.
So it's divesting, just real quick. So this is, I was a sponsor, I'll entertain anybody to join this one. This is not just jumping, I think, on the heartbreak and certainly horror that's happening across the globe. There is a real practical need for this right now. If anybody follows any type of investments, the state of New York, I believe, has $2 or $3 billion in their pension plan that's tied directly to Russian investments. And by all accounts, that is probably going to be zero. So that only takes that ability to us to fund the pension liability for them a little bit backwards. Again, we had some long-term planning sessions here, and we talked about our fund obligation. So I did it from a practical standpoint, and certainly from the United standpoint. I was already told, another example would be BlackRock, which is a major investment company in the world. It's one of the biggest. They have a $17 billion ETF that is probably going to be zero. So the average investor, whether it be me, you, Main Street, or Wall Street, is going to lose all their money in there. So there's a real practical concern with this. The third thing is, I did speak to Chuck Ranigan, who sits on our obviously finance team. He's already assured me that there are no Russian assets, which is great, and that they would not look at any Russian assets going forward. But I still would like to take the vote out of solidarity, certainly for our brothers and sisters over in the Ukraine. So I can't do the motion. So on Council Seeker's motion, seconded by Council Murphy, on this resolve, all in favor? All opposed? Item carries. Next order of business. You better have a drink of water for this one.
Paper 11422, resolved that the Malden City Council call on the federal government to cease deportations to Haiti under Title 42. Whereas Malden is home to thousands of Haitian immigrants who contribute to the workforce, economy, and cultural vibrancy of the city, many who maintain ties to families and community members still in Haiti, and is located within the greater Boston Haitian diaspora, is the third largest in the United States. And whereas on March 25, 2020, the Trump administration initiated a deportation policy under a public health law that restricts immigration at the United States-Mexican border based on an invocation of the Public Health Act under Title 42 of the U.S. Code, Title 42, in conflict with the U.S. constitutional law and international law. And whereas the Biden administration has continued the immigration policies of the Trump administration, further ramping up deportations, leading to mass expulsions of Haitians under Title 42, and whereas Haitian migrants were unable to make claims for asylum as required under U.S. law and international law. Consequently, the actions of the Biden administration are contrary to U.S. and international laws against returning migrants to persecution and torture. And whereas in early September 2021, images revealed the inhumane treatment of Haitian migrants at the hands of U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents who, mounted on horseback, used the hides of their whips to violently chase Haitian migrants, a cruel reminder of slavery and the anti-blackness embedded in this country's immigration policy. And whereas on September 24th, 2021, Haitian community leaders in Boston organized a protest in front of the John F. Kennedy Federal Building denouncing the deportation of Haitian migrants and the inhumane treatment by border officials. Many local and state officials joined in this protest. And whereas the deportations under Title 42 have only escalated, with the U.S. government deporting nearly 14,000 Haitian migrants since September 2021, totaling more than 17,000 Haitian migrants deported to Haiti since the beginning of the Biden administration. And whereas on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022, during Black History Month, the Biden administration chose to extend its practices of deportation under Title 42, despite widespread opposition for human rights groups, public health officials, elected officials, and asylum advocates. And whereas migrants are forced to return to a Haiti rife with political, social, and economic instability and are often at a greater risk of kidnapping, abuse, and violence, the United States government recognizes the risk in Haiti as the State Department's Level 4 travel advisory to U.S. citizens currently states, do not travel to Haiti due to kidnapping, crime, civil unrest, and COVID-19. And whereas the city of Malden has long welcomed immigrants in many nations, his city, whether fleeing persecution or terror, escaping gender-based violence, seeking reunion with family members, or pursuing economic opportunity. And whereas this country has a legal and moral obligation under its founding principles, its own laws, and international laws and treaties to receive migrants in distress in search of relief and refuge. Thus, measures restricting access to asylum must not be allowed to become entrenched under the pretense of public health. And whereas President Biden has expressed his commitment to reverse Trump-era immigration policies and build a humane immigration system, and whereas we have an obligation as a city council to ensure that we have a government and a community committed to justice and dignity for all people, including Haitian migrants seeking refuge. Therefore, be it resolved that the Malden City Council calls for the federal government to reverse the Title 42 determination and immediately halt the deportation of Haitian migrants, therefore allowing them to seek due process through our legal system to make claims for legal status.
Well, first of all, congratulations on reading that entire process. That was very good. Councilor Carrie McDonald, it is sponsored by Councilor Carrie McDonald and Councilor Colleen Hayes. She is not here, so Councilor McDonald for the paper.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Spatafora, and I will work on shorter resolves going forward. So I wanted to offer a little bit of context here. You know, we, in a recent council meeting, talked about the need to be in tune with the issues that are affecting our diverse community, and this is a big one right now. I don't need to tell any of us that there's a huge Haitian community here in Malden, and one of the ways that we show respect and care to our immigrant communities is by being aware of what's going on with the broader culture and national ties that they have. And so this is a big issue for the Haitian community in Malden and across the metro area. So I was approached about this resolve by some members of our Haitian community, and in passing this resolve, Malden would join with a couple of other cities nearby, including Medford and Boston and others who have made similar calls. So this is part of a strategy led by Haitian elected officials and community leaders to help put pressure on the Biden administration about this particular policy. I want to be clear, this is not calling for any particular settlement about the migrants seeking that have been at the border from Haiti per se. What it's saying is right now, all of those migrants from Haiti are being denied the ability to seek asylum, which is something that is enshrined in many of our laws and international laws because of this use of the Title 42 public health law to just say, we're not even going to deal with that, we're not even going to give the opportunity. So that's referenced a couple times in this resolve, but I wanted to be clear, that's what we're calling for, is to end the Title 42 determination and be able to support the ability to seek asylum and help reunite families and attend to those family and community ties that stretch across the ocean. So I hope I can count on your support for that resolve, and I believe that our Haitian community will be grateful for the council's attention to this matter and for reading it in full in our council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a federal issue, you know. I mean, we're the Malden City Council. Where do you, this is a resolve. Where do you expect this to go, and how do you think it's going to be effective to solve a big problem like this?
So, Council McDonald, you can reply.
Yeah, thank you. So if we were to do this on our own, I would say it's not. But this is part of a strategy to pressure the Biden administration that's supported by Massachusetts' federal delegation, and that a number of cities and towns who are connected to their Haitian residents want to build the momentum to support changes that our federal officials can elect. So it's part of an aligned strategy, and that's why the ask came to us.
Oh, hold on, Council, I want to make sure. Council, go ahead, Mike's back on.
I understand this is a problem, but myself personally, I think people have to come into this country legally and work, get an opportunity to work towards citizenship and be vetted before you're allowed in our country. What's crossing over the Texas and Arizona borders, a lot of these people are not people that we want in our country. They have to be vetted, they have to be identified. If they're vicious people, I hope they aren't allowed in our country. So, I don't know, this is kind of like, I'm just not in favor of open borders. You know, I believe everybody should be vetted that comes in the country. My grandparents come through Ellis Island, you know, and they were allowed to come in if they had a job to go to, and I just don't think we can accept everyone into our country this way, unless they do it legally. So I don't think it's anything that, I don't have any problem if they're sure people. That's why you vet people, you know, where they're from, what their problems are facing in their country. So, thank you.
Thank you, Council Kahn and Council Winslow.
Yeah, I appreciate Council McDonald advancing this. You know, I think this is talking about removing an unnecessary barrier that was presented so that people can take advantage of our laws that allow asylum. I mean, I know just back in July 2021, the president of Haiti was assassinated by a squad of Colombian mercenaries. It's really thrown the whole country into chaos. I think this past summer there was even, you know, I went to something over here at District Kitchen, hosted by our Haitian community, concern, and you know, just hearing where it just created such chaos. It's just dangerous to go there and to live there. So I think that's what we're looking here, is to have a process that is typically allowed under our immigration laws is being blocked because of kind of COVID rules, and we're just calling out for that. And I remember, I believe I was on the school committee when the Haitian earthquake happened, and we as a community, we had, you know, a significant Haitian population then, but we opened our arms to many Haitians because their Port-au-Prince was devastated, and that has been a wonderful addition to our community, and I don't think it's really created any issues. So I think we're familiar with this population, you know, with folks from Haiti, and they've been a wonderful asset. So I will be supporting this. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Councilor McDonald, for advancing this. I am also not known for my brevity, so I sympathize with having to trim things down, and I apologize. I had intended to actually sign on to co-sponsor this, but wanted to give it the ability to actually read it and understand what I was signing on to. I think you've made a really powerful case for this coming up from the community affected, which is always really important as leaders. I think it's important to listen to what the community brings you. But I also would just say that one of the compelling things about this to me is that it feels like it's a misapplication of our public health data and what were supposed to be temporary rules that's being utilized to basically affect immigration change or to keep an immigration change in place that is no longer, you can't really make the case that it's tied to the pandemic anymore. And I think if we are up here as city leaders saying that we're going to use public health data and use it in a meaningful way and trust data and ask the community to trust the decisions we make based on emergency circumstances, and I think it makes sense that we would sign on to something that's in line with a similar approach at the federal level. And I also want to thank you for just pointing out that it's part of a larger movement and that our federal delegation is on board with this. I do think that steps like this are help to make the case and help to push certain votes a certain way and push policies along. So while initially I was not as informed on it and did, sort of wonder what impact our council could have, I think you've made the case in my own research. I believe that this is the right thing for us to do, so I will be supporting it, and I would like to be added as a sponsor as well.
Thank you, Council Linehan. Clerk, please let the record reflect that Council Linehan is on. Wait, Council O'Malley's next. Yep, Council O'Malley.
Yeah, I'm also in support of this. Yeah, just to restate, it's not asking that any special treatment be given. It's asking for a return to, U.S. law prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the same way we are now meeting back in person with no masks, there's been a huge turnaround when it comes to that. I believe this is an ask to return back to what the laws of our country require and the laws of international law. So I'm also in support, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Council O'Malley. Council Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. I would like to just, ask Council McDonald if, could we amend this? I mean, so it's for all people? I mean, is it just the Haitian population that's going through this, or is it something that is happening, all over the place? And if it is, then, I think we should be responsible to all the people if they're going through this, no matter what nationality they're from or their background is. So,
Thank you, Council Simonelli. Council McDonald.
So the Title 42 determination is specific to Haiti. Now, the U.S. government can make other Title 42 determinations, but they made this specifically about Haiti so that they could avoid due process of these immigrants, right? The request is, it says, to allow them to seek due process through the legal system to make claims for legal status, which is asylum, right? So I'd be happy to, consider amending it to say, and any other Title 42 determinations that may be made. But it's been sort of a targeted thing.
okay. All right, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Simonelli. Anybody else? Okay. I think I'm going to speak. So my perspective is, I did a little research on it as well, is my concern is I understand the government's using this to stop immigration, but the same token is we have not got over COVID yet, because apparently, I know we're not in mass, but if you've gone to an airport, we're still mandated by the CDC and the government to wear a mask. So I just find it confusing, I think, as a resident out there, that this is, they're using this, Biden's the president right now, why wouldn't they remove it? So what we're basically saying is we will not, this is underneath public health, we're gonna say to the government, we don't believe your data, so let's take this away from that government. I have a concern with that because I watched the last school committee meeting, there was as many people for mask as there was against mask. So if we're gonna pick and choose which way we're gonna use the public health laws, I just have a concern. If we're gonna talk about Haiti, I've been very involved with a lot of Haitians organizations my entire life. I agree in asylum for everybody, but this is about public health too. And we hide behind public health for a lot of reasons, but we also use public health to our advantage. And I just have a problem picking and choosing which public health data we're gonna use. Because you have I get vaccinated, I wore my mask, I am not an anti-vaxxer. I just have a concern now, we're saying we're gonna take away the public health mandate. That's my only concern. I'm not necessarily against any immigration status, and certainly Haiti is an awful place, but there's a lot of places in the world right now we can put our finger and say the same thing. So that's just my concern from my perspective. So I will entertain a motion to pass on Councilor McDonald, seconded by Councilor Linehan. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? I oppose too. Next order of business.
Paper one, Communication 104-22, a report from Committee on the Future of Maplewood Square. The Committee on the Future of Maplewood Square has nominated Naomi Kahn of 33 Tyler Street, Ward 6, to serve on the committee. The committee is also seeking additional members, residents, or businesses interested in serving on the committee should contact Committee Chair Councilor Winslow.
Sponsors?
Winslow, Barbara Murphy, and Kerry McDonald.
Okay, Councilor Winslow for the paper. Give me 1 second, Councilor, so I can turn the mic on here. You have the floor.
Yeah, as you may recall, earlier in the year, we passed a resolution to allow the Committee on the Future of Maplewood Square to nominate more people to that committee. And Naomi Kahn of Tyler Street has been participating, and we know she has some great expertise in terms of signs and being involved in Malden arts. So we did, at our last meeting, make a recommendation that she be added to the committee. See. Okay. All right.
Sorry, Councilor Winslow.
Okay, and yeah, so that we were passing this communication on to the whole council, and then it's just the discretion of the council president to accept that recommendation. And then also just generally in calling, we continue to look for residents. I have been getting contact from people, and we'll take that up at our March 28th meeting to figure out what sort of process we're gonna vet some more people. But like I say, with our graphic art skills and other things, she's known through Malden Arts. She's been a great, she's very familiar with the businesses in Maplewood Square, both being a resident as well as someone who's worked with them and doing signs and stuff like that. I think she'll be a very good asset to the committee, like focusing on creating a vision for Maplewood Square, as well as helping. She's already helped us do our flyers for businesses, and so she's been a great asset already to the committee, so we'd like to add her on. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody other sponsors? Okay. Just a communication. I apologize for the sidebar. Councilor Seeker thought it was a committee report. We didn't vote on to receive the committee report, so that was the sidebar. Yep, we're gonna, so I'll make the so you want to make the motion I'll accept the committee report on behalf of the president. Yep. Yeah, the council president will accept the committee report. It's not a vote. I mean, we can vote. All in favor? All opposed? Committee report's accepted by the council president. And I do want to go back. The last paper did pass. I jumped to the next one. It's 9-2. Just to let the record show the residents, the resolve did pass. 9-2. Sorry about that. Oh, that's right. Council Colin Hayes, 8-2. Sorry. I apologize. My math was 11 minus 2. Next order of business.
Paper 105-22, Committee Report, Rules and Ordinance, Paper 79-22, Order, be it hereby ordained by the Malden City Council that Section 4.24.050, 4.24070, 4.24080, 4.24110, 4.24120, and 4.24180 of the Delay Before Demolition or Alteration Ordinance of Title 4.24, Code of the City of Malden, Chapter 4, of the city's revised ordinances of 2020 be amended as follows.
Okay, on Councilor Crow's motion to receive the committee report, all in favor? All opposed? Councilor Crowe for the committee. Oh, I gotta put your mic on. Sorry, Councilor Crowe. Try to avoid that feedback issue from last week. Why is this not working? Give me 1 second. Councilor Crowe, you have the...
Thank you, Mr. President. So the committee met last week, and so all the changes that are happening for the demolition delay are really more administrative, not substantive. I think there was some confusion about, you know, what these proposed changes are going to do to the ordinance. The ordinance has been in effect since 2018, so it's going to still operate the same way it really has been operating in many ways. Some of the things really came to us from the Historical Commission. We do have the city planner, Michelle Romero, that had been doing this work and saw places that needed to be tightened up, it needed to be cleaned up, really to make the ordinance work a lot more efficiently. And so I think the changes were attached, but it's really about application and requirements, documentation, making it electronic version, so people could see it, be it on the online permitting system. 7 copies, $150 application fee. There's been a lot of work that has gone into each one of these things, so that seemed reasonable. And so this is changed from 7 days to 14 days, and that's just to give the Historic Commission 14 days to actually review some of these things. It's very difficult by the time they get the information to set the meeting and set everything in process in 7 days. As we know, that goes by pretty quickly. Actually, if Michelle Romero wants to, if you don't mind, come to the podium in case I'm misspeaking on anything.
Yeah, so I didn't want to interrupt you, so, I always ask the council, no objection for the city planner, Michelle Romero, to address the council. Michelle Romero, if you come up and state your name. Michelle Romero did send a communication to myself.
Yep.
And the mayor and Marie Louise, as well as the council chair, committee chair, about some updates that might have been in the communication, so that's why she wanted to make herself available to give some updates. So, Ms. Romero, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Michelle Romero, City Planner. Thank you for taking this up so quickly. The commission, on behalf of the Historical Commission, I want to thank you as well. I work as the liaison to the commission, so I've been working with them since 2018, June of 2018, when this council unanimously passed the ordinance. You actually unanimously sponsored it as well, although I have to say Councilor O'Malley was very instrumental in moving it to that point. So we've been working with the ordinance for the past few years. Just to give you a little bit of background, over these past years, the commission has reviewed a total of 30 applications under the ordinance. Out of the 34 were for alterations. The other 26 were for demolitions. Out of those 30, 13 were moved on to the second phase, which would require a hearing, and demo delay would be considered. Out of those 13, only 3 were alterations. Now, they held hearings on the 13, but they didn't delay all 13 of them. So just to give you some background of the numbers, we've been working with this for a few years, as Councilor Crowe said, and I want to thank Mayor Christensen as well, who brought this paper to your attention with these recommended revisions. Most of them are administrative. Actually, they're all administrative changes. Even the timeframes that are changing and setting the fees, the criteria, we're moving some language around, but it's all essentially the same language. I would say maybe one exception is we are actually codifying some of the practices that have been in place. So some of the requirements that the developer must do are now going to be codified, as opposed to routinely, repeatedly asking the petitioners to do the same things. It'll now just be in the ordinance. They'll know what's going to be expected of them. And other than that, I'm here for any questions. There were 2 things, and thank you, Councilor Crowe, for mentioning that. There were 2 inadvertent omissions from the recommendations that the committee reviewed. One has to do with the 4 criteria. The 4 criteria are moving from one section of the ordinance to another section, and inadvertently, I only referenced 3 of the 4, so we want to make sure that 4th criteria is added, and that is to section 4.24.110. So again, the same 4 criteria that are now being used for determination of significance are recommended to be moved to the determination of preferably preserved. And again, we just want to make sure all 4 are included. And the second part of the additional amendment from what you have before you has to do with the definitions. We just want to make sure the definitions of significant building and preferably preserved building, as they are in the ordinance today, are updated to reflect all the other changes we're making, so that there's not an inconsistency in the ordinance. So that's it. I don't know if anybody has any questions or needs any more information. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the city planner? Yes, hold on one second. Who clicked the button first? Councilor O'Malley, then Councilor Murphy. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor, and then Councilor Winslow. Sorry, I saw you.
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
I'm
The only
sorry,
question I had, or one of the questions I had, was on the proposed revisions, document number 1. There's a number 3, which is section 4.24.080, criteria for determination of significance. It suggests deleting A, B, and C, subsections A, B, and C. Is that has to do with like the National Historic Register and things like that?
Yes, that actually, those are the 4 criteria I was talking about. It's actually A, B, C, and D. The recommendation is, it's not really, it's deleting them from that subsection, but it's moving them to another section of the ordinance. So that's more of administrative. Those particular criteria, is a property on the National Register? Is it potentially on the National Register, so it's in the process of being put on the National Register? Is it on the state register or on the list to be inventoried? Those 4 criteria are now going to be in another section of the ordinance. So the commission will still be able to look at those criteria and use them. It just won't be at that initial threshold of review, which is determining significance. They won't be required to make the determination of significance based on those things. They can still consider them, but as it's written now, it's almost like a mandated determination. So I think that was, you know, in retrospect, we should have been in the other location in the ordinance. It should have been in the other section. That was one of the recommendations of the State Commission to us. It's more appropriate in that section, second threshold.
And that's because they would most likely find it significant because of those features.
Right. They still have all the other criteria to determine significance. Just the way the ordinance is written now, it says if it meets any of those 4, it shall be determined. So it's phrased a little differently. They can still obviously check to see if it's on the National Register. We will check, they will check to see if it's inventoried and use that background info. But then when it comes to the preferably preserved status determination, that's where those criteria will be enumerated. And right now they're not enumerated, so the preferably preserved status criteria is just kind of open-ended. So again, I call it an administrative correction because it probably should have been in the other section to start with.
And then, because if we leave it in, it automatically triggers a public hearing on those.
If we leave it in, it will automatically trigger it to go to the second inquiry.
Okay.
Review. It'll automatically go to the second threshold, right?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Counsel. Councilor Murphy, then Council Winslow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Michelle. Just a couple of questions. So it's basically the surveys that were done in the past that brought these specific properties to our attention that they could possibly have some historic value. Is that correct?
You're asking about the surveys done in the past?
Yes, that put these 300 properties on the list.
Well, there's actually close to 600
600
properties that have been
properties.
inventoried since 1977.
Okay, so they've been in, so those properties are on the list. Just had question about those properties themselves. So when one of those properties is sold, does an owner or does a new buyer realize that they're purchasing a property that might fall into this category, that they could have some issues with making changes to?
The city doesn't give any particular notice about this ordinance or any other ordinances that the property could be subject to. So no, nothing specific to historic, but nothing specific to any other ordinance either. So, you know, you buy a property, it's a private transaction. The commission has discussed trying to do some sort of educational campaign, including something in tax bill, not tax bills, water bills, something like that. But the problem is, again, once the ownership transfers, that doesn't necessarily carry. But no, people that buy property are in the same situation as they need to know what's in the zoning ordinance, they need to know what's in the building ordinance, you know, all 12 chapters apply. So there's no specific notice for this ordinance or any other ordinance that's given out, to my knowledge, to new owners, so.
I'm just curious, just because this one has a lot more associated with it than, you know, just whether you're in Residence A or Residence C. I mean, obviously, you're buying something that you might not be able to tear down, you might not be able to change, you might not be able to put the color on the house that you want to. You know, it really, I was just curious whether there was
Yeah.
any notice that was given to potential sellers and buyers.
Not during the sales process, but I will comment on two things. Demolition of any property of any age, any district, any place in the city requires review under the ordinance.
Okay.
So that's an automatic.
Okay.
That is triggered every single structure in the city this applies to.
Okay.
That's how it was originally passed, and that's how, so that's demolition.
Okay.
Alterations are what you're asking about more. The alterations piece, which was something Council O'Malley had presented when we started the demolition ordinance process, to be able to preserve facades and things like that. Paint color, you don't need a permit. This is going to be triggered if you apply for a building permit.
Okay.
Okay, so paint, you don't need. Repairs, you don't need. So you have a hole in the roof, that's not going to trigger it. There's certain things that it will not be triggered.
But you want to put new windows in, it would be triggered.
Certain cases, yes, if you're one of the inventoried properties. That's
Right.
the other thing. That's not a citywide application.
No, that's what I'm just
right.
saying, so
Right.
just, you might know you'd have to come through this process.
Right, you would need to at least go to start the initial process, which is again the determination of significance review. So you don't have to necessarily go through the whole process. That's why I gave you the numbers in the beginning. Not all go through the whole
Right,
process.
so if you wanted to, change your siding, you would have to go through the process.
Siding typically triggers it, yes.
Yes, it would change your porches, et cetera.
Porches do. The two, like I said, we've only seen four alterations. One was a complete ripping the roof off and eliminating all the dormers and all the architectural features. That was on Francis Street, and they did an excellent, excellent job. They went to the commission. The commission said, these are the architectural features you need to preserve. The architect incorporated them in, and they got their permit. It literally went that well. Jeleno Street's another example. They were replacing siding. It was on the inventory. They came in, they went through the review process, signed off. It was set, so very limited, that application.
That brings me to my, kind of the
Yes.
crux of my questions here. So when that happened, did those people have to pay a fee for something that
No.
they didn't? Okay.
There was no fee because this ordinance has been operating without fees since
Okay.
day one. So
So-
the city's never collected any fee for any application.
But
Yeah.
we would collect a building permit fee.
You collect building permit fees.
So my question is, now we have a $150 fee and a $300 fee, depending on, so what's the rationale for those fees? It seems like it's a burden to these folks who may or may not even know that they're falling into this category. Why all of a sudden are we having to put fees in?
Well, I think the fee schedule was contemplated at the beginning, and that's why it said in the original paper, fees will be set, but then they just were never set. Back in, a couple years back, some of the councilors attended the meetings. We talked about the fees. There was a proposal by one councilor to do a sliding fee. The commission, and there was another proposal to do a flat fee. The commission liked the idea of a flat fee, so people know what the fee is. They didn't think $150 was cost prohibitive. Now, keep in mind, $150 is the same fee that a major commercial development pays, the same as a homeowner pays, so
I'm more
it's the
concerned
same.
about the homeowner.
Yeah, it's the same flat fee, $150. The $300 isn't triggered unless they have to go through the hearing process, and that honestly was contemplated. There are sometimes hundreds of notices that need to go out, so it was really it's to cover administrative costs, just like all our fees are.
Right. but
Special
it's-
permit fees, everything else, it's an administrative fee.
I guess I'm just really
Yeah.
concerned about the homeowner who, as I said, probably
Yeah.
doesn't even know that, he falls into this category. It just seems excessive. I mean, I can see the $150, but I think I'm going to probably make a motion that we delete the $300 one. Actually, I'm going to make a motion that we remove the $300 fee from the
Yeah.
ordinance.
That would be the one, if I could, just, I guess the expense on the city side is when you get to the 300 level. Because that's when notices and ads are run, and that's when the money, the city starts to expend more money from an administrative point. So if I could, I guess I would say, keep a fee for the second part, even if it's not 300, keep a fee for the second threshold, because that's when the city is spending more
Okay.
money. The first is, there's not a mailing with the first one. There's some administrative costs, but, I mean, I'm sure the commission, I don't know where the numbers even came from. Maybe Council O'Malley remembers he was at one of those meetings where these numbers were thrown around. They asked, well, what are these costs? What does this cost to go to Board of Appeal or Planning Board? What do these different fees cost? And I thought they were pretty low. I don't know if we looked at other cities and towns, but they seemed pretty low, but
Okay, no,
thank you.
I would, then let me retract what I said and say I would like to remove the $150 fee, and we'll leave the $300 fee. So that's one motion. And the other question is just a question. I was really curious. The 7 to 14 days, I totally understand the turnaround time on that. But why go from 12 months to 15 months? For someone doing a project, that seems like an awful long time to keep someone kind of in abeyance of, moving forward with a project.
Yeah, the recommendation from the commission actually started at 2 years, because many of our surrounding cities and towns have a 2-year demolition delay period. They ended up proposing 18 months, and then when we presented to the mayor said, how about we split the difference and do the 15? That is the time that the permit is in a delay period. So from the date the commission makes the decision, this building is preferably preserved, and we want you to explore other options, incorporate these features in, preserve these elements, look for other options other than demolition, the time gets eaten up very, very, very quickly. So it's really an administrative point. I'll give you an example. One of the cases I referenced earlier, it took 3 months before they came back to the commission. We kept sending letters, come back, we need to start working with you, the clock's ticking, we only have 12 months to get this resolved. It took like 3 months, and then it takes a lot of time just to get the process going. So the commission wanted to have more time built in automatically by ordinance. Keep in mind, though, the ordinance allows the demo period to be extended. So if the petitioner and the commission agree to extend it, it can be extended. Like in the case of 15 Ferry, the initial determinations were made in 2019. We just received the last extension today at the meeting, extending it another month. So that has been repeatedly extended, going on, how many years? 4 years. Because it's taken that long for the developer or the owner to come up with another solution to tearing down one of the 3 remaining Converse buildings in the city. So, it takes a long time sometimes to get through the process. So it's not meant to be punitive or to make any delay. In many cases, and I'd have to get you the exact numbers, in many of these cases that I mentioned, the commission releases the project before the delay is even up. So it's really just so they don't wait the full 12 months. They don't wait even sometimes 6 months. It's just to have that time on the books, knowing there's times, sometimes they have to hire a consultant, sometimes there's more involved in revising the plan. So it was really just to give an additional window of time. If you, agree to it, fine. If you don't, I think the commission, as Council Crowe said at the beginning, is going to continue to operate the way it has been, which has been very successfully moving these cases through as quickly as they can. It's not always about the commission, though. It's the developer. They don't always want to necessarily cooperate. They don't, like I said, even sometimes come to the meetings. So it's a lot of pulling and dragging sometimes, and it takes a while to get the momentum. So that's my long story answer.
Not a problem.
Why we need more time.
Okay, you continually mention one word, developer, so I'm assuming you're talking about more commercial properties? I mean, I guess
Most of these are commercial, yes. Most of the ones that I've mentioned are commercial. There are some homeowners. There's a handful of single-family, you mentioned the residents of single-family homes that have come forward and petitioned. Most cases, they were determined not significant. I can think of, there's only, like I said, there were only 3. The Gelano Street was one, the Francis Street. Most of the others are commercial. There's been a few, Blaine Street, Baldwin, Berry Street, Elwell, Central. Those were residential properties that they determined, Columbia Street, Granville was one just done today. They determined they weren't significant and they were just moved on and the demo permit can be issued. So
that's fine. So
there was
of-
no,
Of the 600, could you maybe give us a ballpark percentage of how many are residential versus commercial? I mean, I can see, you know,
yeah, no,
a
I
developer.
do have the list, but, I mean, even, and I should say, out of the 600, this is everything on the state list, so anybody can look this up at any time. This is on the state website. They're commercial, they're residential, they're whole areas, they're squares. I can't really say, no, I wouldn't want to guess that.
But there's a significant amount of residential.
There's a lot of residential. I mean, one of the surveys that was done was the Converse Sprague inventory of 98 when we were trying to establish that historic district. And there were a lot of properties done in that area.
Right, so
I mean,
that's just-
most of those are residential, so.
Right. So that's why I don't want it to sound like this is just a developer issue. This
No,
is
no, no.
something
When I say
that-
the developer, I should say the
Right.
petitioner. I shouldn't
The
say the
petitioner.
developer, the petitioner. I'm used to saying developer,
I just-
petitioner.
I just
Right.
want to make sure we protect the interests of everyone, obviously, in our city, but I don't want to, you know, hamstring, you know, someone who owns their own home who's trying to do something, you know, and that's their one value that they have in their life, you know? Thank you. I still do have a motion on the floor to change.
You do have a
that.
motion, so you need a second. So repeat that motion, Counsel, because I think you had two. It was going to strike the first fee of $150. Is that the motion?
Yes.
Okay, on Counsel Murphy's motion to strike the first $150 fee, I need a second. On the motion? We need a second, though. So if you don't get a second, there's no motion to carry. Okay. So, Counsel O'Malley.
Would you be willing to not necessarily strike the fee completely, but just exempt
Residential?
single-family homes up to, like, to 5 units? Or
Absolutely.
would that be,
So you're saying
a
just
single-
single-family homes?
just like anything not multifamily? You know how there's a legal definition?
Multifamilies 5 or more by zoning.
So
but,
1 to
yeah.
4 units.
That'd be perfect.
So I'd friendly amend it to add provision to exempt 1 to 4 units for the initial fee.
Okay, so I have a motion now by Counsel Murphy to, well, it's been amended by Counsel O'Malley to exempt the fee for $150 for single families,
1 through 4.
1 to 4. Second? Do I have a second? You have the second, Counsel? Okay. Can I make an amendment to that motion? I think they should be owner occupied.
Yes.
Well, why would we waive a fee if somebody doesn't live in the house,
Yep, I agree with you.
right? I mean, that's,
Good.
I mean, I hear the argument. I would say it should really just be 1 and 2, or, you know, but I don't know about the owner occupied one. I mean, I think 3 and 4, there's rentals, they're, you know, they're running a, you know,
business.
Even if they live there, they're still renting
fair.
out the
1
other
and 2.
units, but I don't know.
Would you amend it to 1 and 2?
It's up to you, whatever you.
Counsel Murphy?
Yes.
Okay. So on Counsel Murphy's motion amended by Counsel O'Malley for to exempt the $150 on single and two units. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Okay. So Counsel Winslow is waiting patiently next. Counsel Winslow.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank Michelle and the Historic Commission for working on. They've been doing great work. I've participated in a couple of 3 of these, and I was also on the Rules and Ordinance Committee. And I think when we were drafting the regulations, we had these questions coming up of how broad a net we were going to cast. And I think the recommendation was initially to cast a somewhat broad net, and then we could, you know, trim back the net. I think these are really in the spirit of trying to trim back the net, make it efficient. It's been work for the commission, but I think it's work they've made important decisions, and I think they're really doing the work we asked them to do, is to make sure that historically significant buildings aren't just randomly torn down without any input from the community. So I think they're fulfilling the mission that we set them to, and also making sure that people don't unnecessarily get caught up just because of something. I mean, as you can see, out of the 30 applications, the majority of them have been processed, and people have either do their alterations or demolitions. So I think, and this, I think, will probably even free up some more and make it more efficient. So I'm supportive of that, but I do think they're striking the right balance to know, like 15 Ferry and other buildings, they've struck that balance to make sure we, to me, we passed it because there's historic significance to these buildings. It's something that is a value to all of us as a community. So to just allow willy-nilly tear downs affects the facades of our buildings. It affects the character of the neighborhood. So I'm supportive, and I appreciate the commission and Michelle working on these. I think it's a fair balance, and I think it only will make the process more expeditious and fair, but allow the commission to really achieve the mission that we set out for them to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Winslow. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to echo a lot of what Councilor Winslow said. I think this is a really important step to take. I think, we're not quite facing the tear down pressures that some of our neighboring communities are, and I think to be ahead of this is the right thing to do. We do have a lot of architectural significance in the city that you wouldn't want to lose. I did have, I guess, a question. I'd want to make sure I understand. So you're only applicable to this if you have sought a designation and are seeking an alteration to your property. So the specific instance that I'm thinking of how this could help it is, without calling out a specific property, there's a very large home around the Clifton and Summer Street area that's been vacant for a couple of years, had a part of a facade ripped down that wasn't part of the original permit. The neighbors are ballistic because they've put a lot of money into some very beautiful older homes that are in a very significant architectural zone. How would this help prevent that, or are there things that we should think about doing in the future that could get to that, even if it's, to Councilor Murphy's point, marketing the fact that this is an available thing, that you can seek a designation if you feel your home is significant? What can we do to prevent instances like that, knowing that that's a one-off, but it's a pretty bad one-off that I'd like to be empowered to know how to help prevent?
Thank you. I know which property you're talking about because you'd called on it because everybody was surprised they were allowed to do that. But that property was never inventoried. So the alteration part of this ordinance was never triggered. If they were proposing a complete demolition, it would have been triggered. Just like I said, demolition of anything anywhere in the city, you don't have to be inventoried. You're triggered automatically, any demolition. But alteration is only triggered if you've been inventoried or on the list to be inventoried. So that would be, a case where the more properties, I was just hearing, wow, the 590, but we're talking about adding to it, and the commission would love to add to that list because there are so many properties that have historical significance, whether for architecture or other features. So the more properties that are inventoried, the more, this would apply. Certainly an educational campaign, not only saying, to notice people, if you're inventoried, this applies, but to say, do you want to be inventoried, so this would apply. That's the only way to do it. So these changes won't affect anything. These changes aren't proposing to add any new properties to the inventory. The only way we do that is if we either pursue a grant, those are the last 5 surveys that were done since '77, pursue a grant to inventory properties, or we do it on an individual basis, which is what the commission typically has been doing lately. As cases come forward and they're trying to make these determinations, the properties need to be inventoried to make the determinations in some case, so to get the historical background. So that's the only, to solve or to address a case like that, the only way would be if it was inventoried, so. But I think there's that balance, Do you want to be inventoried or do you not want to be inventoried, so.
Thank you, Councilor
Thanks.
Linehan.
Yeah, and
Councilor-
I understand that's expensive for people, obviously, too. If you get a designation right, then you're opening yourself up to a lot of higher standards. But it is good to know that maybe an educational campaign is one option to consider. Or I'm just trying to think about how, as we have a lot of investment money coming into our community, how do we get ahead of this, what I hope would be the unusual one-off or occasional behavior of like getting a backdoor into doing a demolition because you've already ruined the property, or you get one permit and you do something you weren't supposed to. We don't seem to have a lot of leverage in those situations, so getting ahead of it seems like a better way, to approach it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and if I could just address that one thing you brought up on a note, letting your property fall into a state of disrepair, or like you said, kind of doing things to make it there is a provision in here that talks about demolition by neglect. So that's not allowed, but you have to find the property that's being demolished by neglect, and they're not, obvious necessarily, or in some cases they are, but we can't really enforce the ordinance or the building code unless we know it's happening. And sometimes it's internal stuff that's rotting away, so we don't find out till after the fact.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hand. Councilor O'Malley. You're on now.
Maybe I misremember. For some reason, I had thought that alteration did trigger the ordinance, but you're saying it doesn't.
It does. Only alterations of properties that have been inventoried.
Really?
Yep. That's what was settled on at that meeting, yeah.
Do you know which section controls that?
Of the ordinance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to demolition, I see that we define demolition as an act of pulling down, destroying, removing, dismantling, or raising a building in whole.
Yes.
Would it be helpful to define that or in part, if they're only planning on tearing down a part of the building?
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about internally, because occasionally we forget that it says in whole, and we start to say, hey, you need to go through the process because you're tearing off half of the building. And then we, Nelson Miller and I work on administering this ordinance, and we say, no, it's in whole. So if it said in part, that would definitely expand things, It is in whole, so, yeah, that's, again, going back to what I can remember of the committee meetings, because this was discussed a lot at committee level before the council adopted it or ordained it. That, I think, was one of the points that was discussed. So wasn't the point about alterations. When is the review for alterations going to be triggered? And that is in section 4.24, 040. That's where it says the review for alterations is only if you're surveyed or on the National Register on the list to be surveyed. I recall that as being, a compromise to get that provision in. That's a very unique provision. Most cities and towns only have demolition delay ordinances. They don't have demolition and alteration delay ordinances. That's and it's been kind of, it's been very different to administer, but that's very unique. And again, that I think you brought, I forget where you found that facade ordinance, but you brought that to the table. This was new until you brought it. So, but this is part of the original ordinance.
It was an effort to allow old, derelict buildings to be demolished if they could maintain the facade, specifically one Salem, which we couldn't save because the facade was built into the structure of poured concrete around steel. So it didn't, unfortunately, save that building, but that was kind of the thought process. If we wanted to allow it to be in part demolition, would it just be changing the definition?
It would change the definition, yes.
Okay.
But I'll just note one thing, if I could, on Salem Street. We didn't save the building, I agree, and we did our own structural analysis, but the commission recommended that the new building have a facade that replicates the old building, and they have review and approval over that, and that's what the petitioner has been doing, is presenting plans that show that. So it's not saving the building, but it's going to have a very similar look to the old building. So in that sense, it worked. The ordinance worked.
That's true.
But thank you.
And then, sorry, and I'm keep coming back to the removal of A, B, and C and D from the initial part. Would it hurt if we left it in, that it automatically gets triggered? Or is that just to give the commission more deference? I'm just trying to think of a situation where something would be on the National Historic Register or in the local register or the state register, and we wouldn't want that to go to a preferably preserved hearing process.
No, I suppose there's no harm to leave it in. It was recommended by the State Commission that it's more appropriate in the other section, and whereas the other section, preferably preserved, doesn't actually spell out any criteria, that's why we've recommended to move those criteria there and also add the other more generic criteria.
Could it be in both?
I don't think it's, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in it. They're gonna take it into account anyway. The first thing they do when they look at the property is, you know, and that's right on the application form. Has this property been inventoried, yes or no? And that's like, whether they check off yes or no, I check anyway. So we know right away, because that's got the historical, if it's been inventoried, that's where all the historical data is about the property. So they're gonna look at that anyway, and I don't think removing it or keeping it really is gonna change. It was really just more of administrative cleanup to move it. I don't think it's gonna have any effect whether you move it or you don't, but I think I would recommend it's moved
Okay.
to the other section, but
And then one other question, I apologize, I'm no longer at ordinance, and I apologize for this being this annoying. On number 4, it says to change 4.24.110 by adding a new subsection D. I'm assuming that means striking the existing section D?
yeah, it says renumber subsequent sections accordingly, right. So you're gonna move the criteria there, and then the other ones beneath it will be renumbered.
Because right now, subsection D says notification to building commissioner that building is not preferably preserved.
Right, that gives, right, so this is actually adding a criteria section in. You could add it as a completely new section, just like you have a section called criteria for determination of significance. You could have a separate section that's called criteria for determination of preferably preserved. If you think that's cleaner, you could, I think we recommended it just be added into the existing framework.
Okay. Okay,
Whether it's a separate section or it's in there, it's fine. That, all the preferably preserved provisions are lumped together in that section. So that's why we thought it should go there, but it could be it could be a separate subsection too, if you feel more comfortable, if you think it's clearer with that.
no, it's fine, I just
Yeah.
wanted to confirm it. So I have just 2 motions, and then I'll be done. I would move that we amend the paper, or the ordinance through this paper, on section 4.40, 4.24.020, and amend the definition of demolition to include the following, in whole and adding or in part. And then my second motion would be to amend the entire section 4.24 by striking any reference to 12 months and inserting 24 months. Thank you. Knowing that that probably doesn't have a very good chance of passing. Thank you.
Okay, so I need seconds. Michelle Romero, just to make sure I'm clear. If these were to pass, does it change the notice, meaning how they came out of committee? We wouldn't have to go back, right? Are these substantial?
You're making amendments on the floor. This never went for a public hearing. You're amending a different section. It's not the same
Okay.
as zoning
I
ordinance.
just want to make sure,
So
okay.
I think you can amend on the floor, right? But
Okay. So, if I get this straight, Council Melly, I was writing it down. So what was the first section when you said in whole or in part? What section was that, Councilor? The first motion, I got the second one, 4.24, striking reference to 12 months to 24 months. What was the first one I only got in whole or in part? What was the item number? Oh, you know what, I'm sorry. There you go.
So Councilor Linehan's story about that property on Summer Street that has been sitting like that triggered this in my mind. And it would be changing 4.24.020 to define demolition both as in whole or in part. So if you're going to demolish half of the building, or 75% of the building, or 99% of the building, it would trigger this review.
Okay. Questions, comments, suggestions? Councilor Murphy.
What was the 12 to 24 months?
That was section, let's do this motion
Okay.
first, Council, because I want to make sure I get this right. So, any questions or comments on this particular motion? Councilor McDonald for the first time.
I'm curious if there is a process or a protocol by which someone applies for a permit for a property that hasn't been inventoried, and maybe based on certain standards, the date it was built or whatever says, there's a question to the Historic Commission or to our staff, should we inventory this property? I mean, part of what I hear you asking, Councilor O'Malley, is about whether this applies to enough properties and permits and so on, and so I'm just curious, is that something that we need a policy for? Is that something that could also take place, kind of in kind more easily behind the scenes?
So you're asking, has anyone ever asked that, or?
Has that ever been done? Is that feasible?
Yeah, I think it can be done. Usually we get a call well, the way the system works now, just briefly, is we do everything online, right? So all the properties are in the database. There's supposed to be a flag on all the properties that have been inventoried, so that anytime a permit's applied for, a flag pops up, and it triggers the building commissioner and the inspectors to know, you need to send this for historical review. I won't lie to you, that system is not fail-proof, and some stuff has just gone through, and we've been like, how did that happen? The system didn't work, the computer didn't work right, or whatever, so it's not foolproof. But what normally happens is somebody calls and says, I think my property's historic, or I want to build on this, or I want to do that, and then we look it up. Say, yes, you're inventoried, you need to go over the review, or no, you don't. I've been here now almost 20 years, I don't think anyone's ever asked, can I inventory my property? People have asked, where can I find history about my property? So we tell them, library, registry of deeds, et cetera. But no, no one's ever asked to do that. If somebody asked to be reviewed, I'd have to see, I mean, they're only reviewing it under jurisdiction of this ordinance. So even if someone wants to be reviewed, I think they would have to get the property inventory.
My question was more, would we ever choose to inventory a property?
After someone's asked?
Yeah. Not that they asked to be inventoried, but I'm saying you've got a historic home who's like, I want to do this major thing to the facade.
Yeah.
And would there be a point in the process at which we would say, you know what, I'm gonna check this one out. Let's inventory this and see if it's appropriate for historic preservation.
Yeah, we've never done that.
Okay.
They're on a very limited budget to do the inventories. Like I said, we typically need these state grants to do, we do them in groups. No, and I don't think this would apply. Once they file the application, that's when the ordinance is in effect.
Okay.
So we couldn't retroactively say, oh, by the way, now that you're subject to this, so no, I don't think so.
Thank you, that answers my question. So then in response to Councilor O'Malley's proposal, I would only want to consider supporting that if there were an appropriate threshold. I mean, partial demolition could be like taking out a back porch. So I would think there would need to be an appropriate threshold of how much demolition. I guess I'm asking item this, or maybe that's, I don't know who I'm asking that question to.
Go ahead, Councilor O'Malley, mic's on.
So you actually kind of hit the nail on the head. It would involve that. So like, for instance, say in this circumstance, say you have a historic wraparound porch in the west end of Malden, and you decide you want to rip it off. This would get triggered, and they'd say, you can put your porch back, but you have to do it so it looks like the historic porch. Like, that's the exact reason for the ordinance. It doesn't apply to like demolition inside. You can demolish everything inside your house, gut it completely, which is what that house did. And the only time it triggers it is when it's touching the exterior facade. So if you're demolishing the porch, like your example, it would go through the process. It sounds like it's not happening right now, though.
Well, yeah, and I guess I'll defer to the building commissioner, Nelson Miller.
So can I ask one question? Michelle, just interrupt you, and I just want to make sure, I don't want to. So, Councilor O'Malley, you mentioned 4.24.02, right? Correct, but it's not in the committee report. So my concern is I just want to make sure it's properly before us before we start making changes. Michelle, Ms. Ramiro said this is second. I just want to make sure, can we be making the amendment? Because it's not on this one.
The definitions, again, you are amending, I'm not sure about your rules for amending. This wasn't at a hearing, so there was no notice. This is just, you're amending
But
regular
it's
ordinances.
not on the docket. That's my, I don't want to stifle debate. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's properly, we're talking about something that's not here.
Yeah, that part I don't know.
Yeah. No, but you referenced 4.24.02, right?
Right.
But if you look at our committee report, it says 4.2405, 4.24, it doesn't mention that particular number. That's my only, I mean, again,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
we can still, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're talking about it properly, make sure there's nothing, so we can still continue to debate. I just want to make sure that we might not be able to take a final vote, we might have to fix this after, but, Council McDonald, you had the question to, I think, Council O'Malley, which was about the porch. Council Romero was addressing that. Do you want to bring
Yeah.
up the building inspector too?
I was just gonna say, if you're gonna rip off the porch, you're applying for a building permit, not a demolition permit. So I think the ripping off the porch is actually an alteration. And so that's, I don't think to say demo in whole or in part. The couple comments I mentioned earlier about, we had a case like that. They were ripping off like part of the whole building, like a section of the building. But I'll defer to Nelson to see what, if ripping off the porch is a demolition or an alteration,
So if there's no,
to see whether it would be
concerns,
triggered.
Nelson Miller,
please.
name and title for the record, please.
Nelson Miller, Building Commissioner, City of Malden. So the problem with demolition in part is that the ordinance doesn't use the terms demolition permit and alteration permit. So if we put something as broad as demolition in whole or in part, every single permit that comes to our department is going to go to the Historical Commission. Because I know the nice, easy example is someone's porch, because that actually happened. Well, doing a new roof involves demolition. Changing your front stair involves demolition. Changing a window involves demolition. We would have 3,500 to 4,500 permits a year going to the Historical Commission, and I don't think that's really what you're trying to do. So if you may have to clear up, if you want to do that, any demolition permit, but the problem is when someone applies for a permit to redo their porch, they don't apply for a demolition permit, they apply for a building permit. I think it's very difficult to set a threshold of demolition without forgetting the fact that there are two guys who are building inspectors sitting at their desk tomorrow morning looking at building permits, not pictures or Architectural Digest, and trying to figure out, do I really give this person a permit or not because it's architecturally significant. That's not what they do.
So if you don't mind staying there, there's a couple of lights in Council O'Malley, you still have the floor, but any other questions for Mr., oh, you don't have it? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Council McDonald, you have it, still have the floor. I don't know why it went off. There you go, you got it. Hold on, I don't know why you're blinking again.
I think it went off because I turned it off.
Yeah, you
'cause I
might have
thought we
turned
were
it- you
doing
got it on
something
now,
else.
right?
But I would just say, so I don't think I can support then a change about demolition in whole or in part, but I think this is a worthy topic to figure out if there's another way to address this concern.
Fair enough.
Thank you,
Counsel.
this was very helpful.
Thank you, Council McDonald. Any other questions? Will we have the building commissioner up? Just I don't want to have him sit down and have him come back up. All right, so Council Winslow, you're first, but Council Miller, do you have a question for the building commissioner? Do you mind if do you want to ask the, Nelson, stay for 1 second. Do you have a question for the building commissioner?
I thought I was off the hook.
Thanks.
No, not yet. Thank
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess my thing is, when people buy these properties, are they aware that they bought a historical piece of property?
Yeah,
So
I could actually answer that. There's a lot of people have questions about, how come they're not made aware when they buy the property? Well, the reason for that is the city has next to zero involvement in private real estate transactions. The only people in the city that know a property is being bought or sold is the fire department, because they're going to do a smoke detector inspection. So I think Michelle said people are responsible to find out what ordinances and laws we have. We give people the bad news about their new house after they've bought it, and they've come to our office to apply for something, and then we say, yes, you can do that, no, you can't do that, or whatever.
Yeah, because I think, when I was serving as the Director of Inspectional Services, we had a lot of those problems and had people coming in and, you know, they spend all their money on buying the property because the properties today are so expensive, and it was back then in that era as well. But, and then, you know, all of a sudden they run into these difficulties, and then, you know, we're telling them what they can do and what they can't do with the piece of property that they own. And then sometimes it can get very expensive when you're doing when you got to meet the criteria of the historical society's rules, or you know, so they don't have the money to fix those things. You know, what do we do then? And we're kind of putting a burden on, you know, new homeowners that are coming into the city. Now, obviously, if you're coming into a pot, you know, in the West End, and I think even there's a lot of spots in your ward too, Councilor O'Malley, that you know when you walk in there, it's a historical area. But there are other properties that you go and you buy, and you know, you don't know it's on the historical registry. You don't know the history of the property, because a lot of times the people selling the property don't really, you know, sometimes they'll tell you that the basement apartment that's downstairs in the basement, it actually comes with the house, right? So they, you know, they don't always, sometimes they're less than truthful, let's say that. And so I think that, you know, it's a big burden on these people. And I think this is something that we should be doing for particularly new residents that are moving into the city to make Malden their home and don't know about these rules and regulations. And all of a sudden they find themselves 6 months later with trying to rehab their property, and then they find that they can't because they don't have the financial means to do it and didn't know the rules beforehand. So maybe we should be working on something like that. To implement. I mean, I know it has nothing to do with you, but I'm just saying, and I don't know, Ms. Romero, if we do have anything like that in place.
No, that would just be, like I mentioned in the beginning, like an educational campaign. The commission has talked about that, trying to do some sort of educational campaign, including something in water bills or something like that, just to put, you know, get some publicity out there. There was some publicity when this ordinance was passed in 2018, but, you know, it just, other things made the news instead. So, yeah, it would need to, you know, be targeted. Obviously, it's a finite number of properties that this affects for alterations, which seems to be the bigger concern. The demolition is just citywide. I mean, we could just, I mean, it is on the city website, Demolition Ordinance, Demolition Delay. It's right, you know, it's got its own page, but anybody that buys property in the city needs to know that, you know, so that's 100% it affects demolition in whole, at least. So, and I do want to, if I could, Mr. Chair, Mr. McNaught is here, and he's let us know that amendments to sections that were not on the docket would not be recommended. They would need to be. So on that note, I'm just going to look quickly. Definitions were not listed under the proposed revisions, so I would have to ask you also to hold the recommendation, the additional recommendation to change the definition. So anything to 4.2.4-020, I think we should wait, and we'll put back through the process. Maybe the ones I proposed, maybe some additional ones the councilors have mentioned. But I would ask you to please consider the additional recommendation to 4.24.110, because that was on the docket. That's that missing criteria I forgot to put in. So that's something I would like.
So number one.
Yes, number one on the email. Yes.
I unfairly got this email from Michelle.
I only sent it to the chair. I didn't want to violate the open meeting law. To the chair and to the chair of ordinance as well. To the president and the chair.
So Michelle, tomorrow, can you just send this email to the clerk? And then we'll have the clerk send it out so everybody can.
I actually sent it to the clerk as well.
Oh, you did? You're right, Craig and
Yes,
Patty.
yes.
So Patty, tomorrow, can you just send out to the full council so they can read what I'm reading? So the good news is we get to do this all over again in 2 weeks.
Well, that's for, you're talking for the definitions?
Well, I'm saying for the ones that are not before us, the 4.24020, right? That's
Yeah,
all-
that's it. The
yeah,
other
yeah.
one, number one, is properly before you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Thank you.
So Councilor O'Malley, you had that motion. I don't know if you're gonna change it or not, but either way, we can wait. Okay, fair enough. So Councilor Winslow, You've been patiently waiting. Council Windsor, we turn your mic on there. There you go. You want, wait, why is it?
No, I mean, I just, besides the open meeting question, I mean, I wasn't supportive. This was a very similar discussion we had in Rules and Ordinance, and, I mean, the thought was we were trying, when we passed this demolition delay ordinance, was to try to capture, like, remember when the church out here was torn down without any notice, just sort of very outrageous demolitions. I think that's kind of what we wanted to make sure, that there was at least some public process when such significant buildings were torn down without any notice to the public. So I think, and as we talked in Rules and Ordinance back then, when you get to this alteration stage, you get into the thing, the net catches everything, and our staff, our historic commission just don't have the capacity. So we wanted to make sure that really big things got caught, and then if we need to make those tweaks, we also have to understand we might have to dedicate more resources. Michelle's, you know, a planner, she's not necessarily the full-time historic commission. So if we add this responsibility to the historic commission, we have to staff that up. And so that's, I just, yeah, so, but I think it's not before us, so I think I would, Pat, yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Winslow. Councilor Crow's been waiting patiently, and then I'll go to Council Linehan.
So we can get back to actually the committee report, the topic at hand. So I do make a motion that we list the fourth criteria under section D. So make that amendment to the committee report, and this, so this, okay. And I think Councilor O'Malley had a second amendment that he wanted to make.
He can't.
About, no, the second thing, he moved from the 15 months to the 24 months.
Yeah, I think that's section 24 though, right? .20, or no? Okay, so hold on. So let's take your first motion. Is that fair? Council Crowe?
So the first one is to list the inadvertently omitted, and it says listed on the list of significant buildings as identified for future survey or an inventory as provided by this ordinance.
Okay, so Council Crow's motion. Patty, do you have that? This one? Yeah, okay. So in Councilor Crow's motion, Patty will record that, seconded by Councilor O'Malley, correct? Just want to make sure. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Patty, I'll give you a minute. You have it? Yeah, just hold on one second. I just want to make sure, Patty, I want to.
I just mentioned it because Council O'Malley had
Yeah.
put those two things in
I
at
just
the
want to
same
make sure
time,
we
so wanted to
record
make
it.
sure that
Patty's
if
taking
that was
notes, so I
gonna
wanna-
be taken up, that it is taken up properly. And,
The
all right,
24, no,
feels
I'm
for
just,
lack of
I'm
a
waiting for the
second.
clerk to catch up to some of our notes. That's why I want to make sure we get it accurate.
Well, I'm going to have to listen to the video anyway.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, Council Crowe, so now you still have the, so you want to go to Council O'Malley on his,
He decided to withdraw his motion, or feel for a last of a second, so on the
is there a second on Council O'Malley increasing it from 12, Patty's got my
From
notes.
15 to 24.
15 to 24? Is there a second? Okay, no second. That one does die. Councilor Crowe, you still have the floor.
So, based on the committee report, make a motion that we adopt as amended. That, not the 24, no, that field. Yeah, the 150 is, it was removed. Yes, 1 and 2. So it's as amended, that includes the $150 fee,
Removal only-
not for
only
1 and
remove for
2,
singles
and
and twos.
inclusion on the other, the fourth criteria.
Okay, everybody understand that? Council Linehan, did you take your light off? Because I think you had it on. I don't know if it was a double. I want to make sure before we take this motion. Council Linehan, I just want to make sure before we take this motion, if there was discussion on any of those. Council Linehan, your mic's on.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to reiterate that I think the one case I'm talking about, I don't want us to get too distracted by one instance. I think we can definitely get to the root of what happened, and that's a very particular instance. But I also wanted us to just keep in mind as we think about talking about this down the line, that I think a lot of the requirements that we were discussing could affect somebody trying to do an energy retrofit. So if you're trying to take your house off oil, and it necessitates like insulation, new windows, porches to be rebuilt.
Solar.
Right, solar, yeah, exactly. It has a way of snowballing, and you could then hit that threshold without really, you're trying to do the right thing, and then all of a sudden, you're making a substantial alteration. So that was all I was going to say before. I think we've exhausted the topic. I look forward to talking about it again in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you, Councilor Linehan. I just want to make sure that was not. So on Councilor Crow's motion, which adds the fourth item, correct, Council?
Yeah.
Councilor Crowe? And
Yes.
as
so
amended
it is to-
earlier, with Councilor
Yes.
Murphy's a motion to waive the $150 fee
Yes.
for singles and twos. Everybody understand?
Yes. So, yes, motion to enroll as
Oh,
amended.
we have to vote on your, right? Do we vote on the?
No, we did.
We did? Okay. There's so many things going on right now. So on Councilor
Crow?
Crow's motion, seconded by, I didn't get a second. All right, on Council Simmons, and the funny thing is, I think we're on page 7. Seconded by Council Simonelli, motion to enroll. As amended. Clerk will call the roll. I think we gotta call the roll on this one. Go ahead.
Finance and ordinance usually.
Oh, you gotta turn your mic on. Hold on, go ahead, Greg. I'll do it. Don't touch. I got it. Go ahead.
Counselor Hayes, Counselor Condon. Counselor Crowe.
Yes.
Counselor Linehan. Counselor McDonald. Counselor Murphy. Counselor O'Malley. Counselor Seeka. Counselor Simonelli. Counselor Winslow. Counselor President Spatafora.
Yes. Next order of business.
Okay. Motion to accept the committee report.
On Councilor Crow's motion to accept the committee report, all in favor? All opposed? Councilor Crowe for the committee.
Well, I hope this is going to be a little more straightforward and quick. This is the obstruction ordinance that we had lots of discussion about. It actually just looks at when there's two streets coming together that they can't have 6-foot, fences or bushes that impede people from seeing another car, a pedestrian, a bike, a carriage, a dog, anybody, from sort of seeing what's coming down the other side of the street. So this is the only part of this ordinance that we had taken up. And if the building commissioner is here, if you have any questions, just the corners, not the driveways. It's almost, so it changes it from 10 feet to 25 feet. And as we in committee kind of looked at it, the 10 feet doesn't get you to anything that allows you to obstruct. So on the committee, this went to the planning board, a joint ordinance and planning board meeting, and it was voted unanimously to approve. So I make a motion that we approve. Enroll, sorry.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Council Seeka, your light's on. Council Seeka.
I just wanted to second.
Okay, so you had your light on. So on Councilor Crow's motion to enroll the ordinance as amended, seconded by Councilor Seeka. Clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Condon. Yes. Counselor Crowe.
Yes.
Counselor Linehan. Yes. Counselor McDonald.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy. Yes. Counselor O'Malley. Yes. Counselor Seeka. Yes. Counselor Simonelli. Yes. Counselor Winslow. Council President Spatafora.
Yes. Motion carries. Paper is enrolled. Next order of business.
Next order, committee report, rules and ordinance, paper 3622, order be it hereby ordained that Title I, Section 12 of the Code of the City of Malden be amended to the new ward precinct boundaries submitted by the City Council to the Local Election District Review Commission and approved on December 10th, 2021.
Motion to receive the committee report.
On Councilor Crow's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
This
Councilor
is-
Crowe for the committee.
This, as we know, has been a great deal of topic of conversation on where we're moving some lines around the, we do have Carolyn Desiderio. If you want to have any questions in particular. set up the wards and precincts. And so this had to come to ordinance. There was some questions, and luckily, Ms. Desiderio kind of worked with some councilors that had some concerns or questions about some ward lines. And so this was passed unanimously based on what we had discussed previously. So I don't know if anyone has a question.
Clerk is here, so I'll give the podium to
Since
the
she's
clerk.
waited so patiently.
Good evening, thank you. Yeah, we talked about this last week in ordinance committee. There was only one question that came up, which I think we settled with Councilor Winslow, the line between Ward 6 and Ward 7. Kind of a funny line. It goes to a parking lot instead of down the middle of a street, which is what you'd expect, but it had to go along the census blocks and the property lines and things like that. So I think we answered all those questions, hopefully to your satisfaction, Councilor, and this is the map you guys voted on, so hopefully you're comfortable with the descriptions of these lines.
Okay, any questions for the clerk? Okay, seeing none.
Motion to enroll.
Seeing none and hearing none on Councilor Crow's motion to enroll, clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Condon? Yes. Councilor Crowe?
Yes.
Councilor Linehan? Yes. Councilor McDonald? Yes. Councilor Murphy? Yes. Councilor O'Malley? Yes. Councilor Sika?
Yes.
Councilor Simonelli? Yes. Councilor Winslow? Yes. Council President
What does it say? I
Spatafora?
don't get the vote? Yes. Paper is enrolled. Next order of business.
Committee report, Finance Paper 7622, ordered that the sum of $37,227.26 is transferred from salary reserve for reclassifications, account 0010-996-5120, into the following accounts. Teen Center salaries, $8,081.77. Police admin salaries, $3,831.74. Information technology salaries, $4,034.33. Controller salaries, $2,343.41. DPW admin salaries, $1,571. Fire admin salaries, $2,343.41. Health and Human Services salaries, $2,893.97. Recreation salaries, $2,893.97. Engineering salaries, $2,343.41. Inspectional service salaries, $1,571. Traffic admin salaries, $5,319.25.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Councilor Murphy of the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, we also have another guest in the audience. We have our Chickarelli.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor. Councilor Murphy, you were speaking without the microphone.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. So we also have another guest this evening. We have lots of guests tonight. We have Mr. Anthony Chickarelli, who is our Human Resources Director, who has been working with myself and also with Maria Louise from the Mayor's Office, who is also here. Had a committee looking at reclassification of job positions within the city offices. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. A couple of years ago, I had requested that we put $50,000 into the annual budget so that we could look at a complaint that I have heard from many of our city employees, that their jobs have changed over time, and that with the step process and the classification process we have, it isn't recognizing their contribution to the city of Malden. So we sat down and started to brainstorm. Unfortunately, COVID kind of threw us a little bit askew, and we're about a year behind where we would like to be. But we finally, after meeting together ourselves and then meeting with all the department heads, we have come up with our first list of individuals who we're going to increase their salary and their job classifications. This is going to be an ongoing process that we see taking anywhere from 3 to 5 years to get through it. It's the first step in trying to look at how we should be classifying our employees and how their jobs have changed over time. It's also, we have a commitment from the mayor to put another $50,000 in for the next budget cycle, so it is something that we will be moving forward with. We're very happy, as you can see from this first take here. we have, the money is not just concentrated in one area or one department. It really is spread out over all of the departments, and all of the department heads, as I said, have Mr. Chickarelli and Ms. Louise have met with them, and they understand the process going forward. And I think they're all excited to see that, there is a vision for how we'll move forward and look at their employees. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Chickarelli.
So, Mr. Chickarelli, just
Any
your name and your
questions?
title for the record, please.
Anthony Chickarelli, Human Resources Director for the
Thank
city.
you, Mr. Chickarelli.
So as Council Murphy so eloquently put it, we've had this in the budget, and with her diligence, due diligence, we finally have moved on it for this year. And the way we decided to tackle it is myself, Maria, Louise from the mayor's office, and Councilor Murphy. We tackled issues that we thought could become pay equity issues. So it was kind of like, let's take care of these people first, then talk to all the department heads and let them know this was coming down, and then what the process will be moving forward. So we're formalizing the process moving forward. We have some forms that we've had that we're going to try to tweak and put together in a nice way that all our department heads will be able to request reclassifications and for the employees, something that looks at where they were hired at, what they're doing now as far as their job duties, and we're also on the other side of this working on trying to do something with our salary ordinance. We have steps right now that we really don't use, so we're taking a look at that too to see how we can restructure that and make it all make sense. That's pretty much it.
Okay, questions? Council Simonelli.
I don't have any questions, Mr. President, but
Oh, Council McDonald after. Sorry, go ahead, Council Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I sat in the committee meeting, and I thought it was a very well-done job that you guys had put this together, and I think that has been well overdue. I know that previously when I sat on the council, those were issues, and I just want to take my hat off to you, as I think you did a wonderful job on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Council McDonald.
I will be happy to support. I love giving people raises. I mean, that's an easy thing to say yes to. So that's really wonderful. And I just wanted to underscore, I appreciate the point that you just made, Director Chickarelli, about the kind of formalizing the process and so on. And it would be really helpful just to get an update at some point before the next round of these come forward about what that process is. And my concern, of course, is just making sure that all city employees know how they can request and so on, which I'm sure that you're thinking carefully about. And so I would, just as that process for formalization goes forward with the next round, I would appreciate just being able to learn more about what that looks like. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, none, seeing none and hearing none. On Council Murphy's motion to adopt,
Yes, because this will. make
all in
some-
favor?
I'll
I'll second it by Council.
Yeah, we need a roll call because we need.
No, it's financial, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So on
We
Council
wanna vote.
Murphy's motion to adopt, seconded by Council Winslow, clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Condon? Yes. Councilor Crowe? Yes. Councilor Linehan? Yes. Councilor McDonald? Yes. Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor O'Malley? Councilor Seeka? Yes. Councilor Simonelli? Yes. Councilor Winslow? Council President Spatafora?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Page 9.
Have some happy employees next paycheck.
Yes, congratulations. Next order of business.
Paper 10922, Committee Report, Personnel and Appointments. Paper 5522, Ordered Council Reappointment of Scroon Carrington, 351 Lynn Street, Malden, Mass. As a member of the Board of Health, term to expire March 21st, 2025.
On Council Simonelli's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor? All those opposed? Council Simonelli for the committee. Oh, I didn't turn your mic on. We just gave you permission to talk, Council.
listen,
I didn't think you
that's
needed
fine.
one, Council Simonelli. Council Simonelli for the paper.
Usually I don't, but tonight I do. Yeah, these are some of the things, the appointments that we went over again in the committee. and I just want to move them all favorably. Nobody has any issues with these, I'm assuming, right? Yeah. Standard.
Okay, any questions, concerns? Seeing none and hearing none on Council Simonelli's motion to confirm the appointment. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carries unanimously. Next order of business.
Paper 11022, Committee Report, Personnel and Appointments. Paper 56-22, ordered council reappointment of Kathleen French, 596 Highland Ave, Malden, Mass. as a member of the Board of Assessors, term to expire March 1st, 2025.
On Council Simonelli's motion to receive the committee report. All those in favor? All those opposed? Council Simonelli for the paper.
Thank you again, Mr.
Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Once again, you know, the committee, subcommittee, voted it out unanimously. No issues. I don't think there's any more issues on this floor. If none, I'd like to move it out favorably.
Okay, on Council Simonelli's motion to move out the committee report out favorably, all those, anybody questions, concerns? Okay, all those, correct. Yep. On Council Simonelli's motion to confirm the appointment, all those in favor? All those opposed? Appointment is granted. Next order of business.
Committee Report, Paper 11122, Committee Report, Personnel and Appointments. Paper 5322, ordered that the mayoral reappointment of Catherine Price, 30 Tufts Street, Malden, Mass. as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board, said term to commence upon confirmation by the City Council and to expire January 31st, 2024.
On Council Simonelli's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor? All those opposed? Council Simonelli for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, if there's no objections, I'd like to move this paper out favorably.
On Council Simonelli's motion to confirm the appointment, all those in favor? All those opposed? Next order of business.
Paper 11222, Committee Report, Personnel and Appointments. Paper 5422, ordered council reappointment of Enrique Casita, 354 Broadway, Malden, Mass. as a member of the Stadium and Athletic Field Commission, term to expire June 1st, 2023.
On Council Simonelli's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor? All those opposed? Council Simonelli for the committee report.
Move to recommend favorably.
Okay, on Council Simonelli's motion to confirm the appointment, all those in favor? All those opposed? Appointment is confirmed. Next order of business. We're going to page 10.
That is it.
And that is my favorite page tonight. The docket is clear. Would anybody like personal privilege? Council Linehan is first, so she got the jeopardy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very, very quickly, I just wanted to remind folks that tomorrow night, Councilor Spatafora and I, as well as the Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, is going to be hosting the second public meeting for the Fellsmere Pond and Park Master Plan. So if you want to go to that, it's on Zoom. Go to cityofmalden.org. You do have to register. Then they'll send you the Zoom link, and it's from 6 to 7:30 tomorrow, and we hope to see people there. The second thing I wanted to mention is that next week, anybody interested in getting involved in Porch Fest, we're going to be having an event at Hugh O'Neill's on the 23rd. It's a fundraiser where if you dine in or take out, a portion of that will actually benefit Porch Fest, but it's also going to be a bit of a meet and greet if you just want to get more information about the event, meet the organizers. We'll all be there. There's going to be raffles, and if you want to, you can stay for the open mic at 8:30. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Council Linehan. Next one up is Councilor Murphy. Let me just give me a second, Councilor Murphy. Mic's on.
And this is just very easy. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Winslow.
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day. That's my middle name, just a little Irish there, so it's happy St. Pat's. Just a few things coming up for this weekend. On Sunday, it's been garden cleanup, been postponed from Saturday, so at 9 a.m. down at the garden, people can come down, and I'll have a few extra bags. If there's enough people in the garden, we'll send people down further along the trail. There's a lot of trash, as I think we're all seeing out there as winter comes, so also suggest everybody get their cleanups planned. I'll be planning some for Ward 6 and stuff like that. The other thing is, as Councilor Murphy and Councilor McDonald and I have been working, we have now started soliciting businesses to put in applications to sign up for Maplewood Fest on May 21st. So you can contact any of us to get that application, and we're hoping that by March 28th we'll kind of be looking at the first wave of those, and just spread the word, and we're looking forward to it. Everything's are coming together. We got our entertainment lined up, and it should be a fun time. So good, thanks.
Council Winslow, where's the application for that? I don't know if I didn't hear it, I just want to make sure everybody else.
You could just contact Councilor Murphy, McDonald, or I.
Okay.
At citymall.org, and we can get it out to them. I also, Lisa Cagnell has them at the city clerk's office.
Thank you, Council Winslow. Councilor Simonelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also want to say happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody out there, and I just want all my colleagues to know that I brought you in some necklaces and little things that you can put on your tables in the back room there, and I want you all to take them because I had to fight 3 leprechauns, and down in my neighborhood, they're really tough. So make sure you grab them before you take off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Simonelli, for the Irish attire. Councilor McDonald.
Thanks. I wanted to give a brief update from the Energy Efficiency and Sustainability Commission, which was some of the members on this dais have participated in the past. The commission has been working with our Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development and the Public Facilities Department to do outreach related to the Mass Saves program, where you can get these great energy incentives for appliances and changes to your home, better insulation. The state has really just upped these incentives because it's a key part of the statewide climate strategy, and we're really trying to help make sure that communities which haven't been able to take advantage of this, renters, small business owners, folks with language barriers, know about these ways you can put money in your pocket right up front. And so we got a grant of support to do a little bit more outreach from Mass Save, and we're going to be ramping that up. So if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out. We're going to be talking about it more as we're going forward, but it's a great opportunity to, as I said, put that money in your pocket and help protect your home or your business. So thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, from the chair, just want to wish everybody happy St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy. I know some of the festivities have already occurred because of the way St. Patrick. Council Crowe, why are you looking at me like that? I can't wish anybody. But enjoy, and everybody, they say everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day, so have a good night. On Councilor Crowe's motion to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Murphy. All those in favor? All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned.